The flood was supposed to be the end of them. Genesis tells us the giants of the ancient world, the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, were one of the reasons God flooded the earth. The Nephilim, the fallen ones, the mighty men of renown. By the time the waters receded, they should have been gone, erased, drowned with the rest of the corrupted earth. But they were not gone. Tucked inside the book of Numbers, in a chapter most readers skim past, is a single verse that contradicts everything Sunday school told you about the flood. A verse that says, plainly, that the giants were still alive generations later on dry land, in the promised land that Israel was about to invade. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Either the Bible is contradicting itself across two of its earliest books, or something happened during the flood that Scripture only hints at. Something that allowed the bloodline of the Nephilim to survive. To understand what happened, we have to go back to Genesis chapter 6, and we have to read it carefully, because most people have only ever heard a summary of it. The actual text is far stranger than the summary. It begins like this, quote, "When men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose." End quote. Then comes verse 4, which is the key. Quote, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." Stop on that phrase. "And also afterward." Most readers glide past it, but it is doing enormous work in this verse. The text is telling us, in the same breath, two things. The Nephilim existed in the days before the flood, and the Nephilim existed afterward. After what? Most scholars who take the text at face value have only two options. Either after the initial appearance of the Watchers, or after the flood itself. The Hebrew is ambiguous, but what is not ambiguous is what comes next in the Bible, because the Nephilim do not disappear from the story. The flood comes. Noah and his family enter the ark. The waters rise. Every breathing thing on the face of the earth, according to Genesis 7, is wiped out. Only those inside the ark survive. The text is emphatic about this. Total destruction. Nothing left. And yet, fast forward only a few books, and the giants are back. Numbers chapter 13. The Israelites have just left Egypt. They are camped on the edge of the land of Canaan, the land God has promised them before they invade. Moses sends 12 scouts ahead, one from each tribe, to spy out the land, to see what is there, to see who is there. They are gone for 40 days. When they return, 10 of them are terrified. Their report shakes the entire camp of Israel. Listen carefully to what they say. From verse 32, quote, "The land, through which we have gone to spy it out, is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height." End quote. Then, verse 33, quote, "And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." End quote. There it is, the same word, Nephilim, same beings whose existence was supposedly one of the reasons for the flood. And here they are, hundreds of years later, on dry land in the hills of Canaan, intimidating an entire generation of Israelites into refusing to enter the promised land. The scouts even give us a clan name, the sons of Anak, the Anakim, and the text says explicitly that they come from the Nephilim. They are descendants, heirs. The bloodline did not end at the flood. So how do we explain this? Christian scholars have wrestled with this contradiction for nearly 2,000 years, and they have proposed three main solutions. Let us look at each in turn. Explanation 1. The Sethite view. The first explanation, championed by Augustine in the 4th century, is that the sons of God in Genesis 6 were not angels at all. They were simply the godly descendants of Seth, the third son of Adam. And the daughters of men were the ungodly descendants of Cain. The Nephilim, in this view, were just exceptionally tall or violent humans. The flood killed them. The Anakim in Numbers 30 are an unrelated tribe of unusually tall humans. And the scouts were exaggerating when they used the word Nephilim. This is the standard view in most modern Western churches, but it has problems. The phrase sons of God in Hebrew, B'nai Elohim, is used elsewhere in the Old Testament, in Job, for example, and in every other case it clearly refers to supernatural beings, not humans, and the Second Temple Jewish writings. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, the writings of Josephus, every Jewish source from the time of Christ understood Genesis 6 to describe angelic beings, not human ones. Explanation 2. The local flood view. The second explanation is more recent. It suggests that the flood was regional, not global. That it wiped out the corrupted civilization of the ancient Near East, but did not actually cover the entire planet. In this view, some Nephilim outside the flood zone survived, and their descendants, the Anakim and others, were the giants the Israelites encountered. This solves the contradiction neatly, but it requires reading Genesis 7 in a very specific way, and most traditional theologians have rejected it. Explanation 3. The second incursion. The third explanation is the most uncomfortable, and it is the one favored by the Book of Enoch, by Jewish tradition of the Second Temple period, and by an increasing number of modern scholars who specialize in ancient Near Eastern texts. It says simply this: the flood did wipe out the first generation of Nephilim, but the Watchers, or other fallen angels, repeated the offense after the flood. There was a second incursion, a second corruption of the human bloodline, and the result was the Anakim, the Rephaim, the Amim, the Zamzumim, and the other giant clans listed throughout the Old Testament. This is not a theory invented by modern conspiracy writers. It is laid out in detail in the Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text that was widely read at the time of Jesus. It is implied in the Genesis Apocryphon, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it explains in a single stroke why the Nephilim keep appearing in the Bible long after the flood was supposed to have ended them. Once you start looking for them, the giants are everywhere in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy chapter 2 mentions the Amim, a people described as great and many, and tall as the Anakim. The Zamzumim, also called Rephaim, a people great and many, and tall. The land of Bashan, ruled by King Og, is called the land of the Rephaim. Og himself, according to Deuteronomy 3, slept on an iron bed that was 9 cubits long. 9 cubits is roughly 13 feet, even allowing for ancient measurement and possible exaggeration. This is a description of a being of extraordinary size. And then, of course, there is Goliath, the Philistine champion who challenged Israel for 40 days. The text in 1 Samuel 17 gives his height as 6 cubits and a span. In the standard Hebrew text, that is roughly 9 feet and 9 inches. In other ancient manuscripts, it is closer to 6 feet 9 inches. Either way, exceptional. And Goliath, the text tells us, had brothers, other warriors from Gath, sons of the giant. Into Samuel chapter 21, David's mighty men fight a series of battles against descendants of the Rephaim. Ishbi-Benob, with a spear weighing 300 shekels of bronze. Suph, another descendant of the giants. Lomi, the brother of Goliath. And one more, an unnamed warrior with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. 24 digits. The Bible is not subtle about this. The land of Canaan, the land Israel was commanded to enter and to clear, was occupied, at least in part, by the descendants of beings the flood was supposed to have destroyed. And the conquest of Canaan, in the books of Joshua and Judges, is in many ways the slow extermination of the giant clans. Joshua chapter 11, verse 21, gives us perhaps the most chilling line in the entire conquest narrative. Quote, "And Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country." End quote. The verse goes on to say that none of the Anakim were left in the land of Israel, but that some remained in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod. Gath? That is where Goliath, generations later, would come from. The bloodline was traced. It was hunted, and eventually, in the time of David, it appears to have been finished off. The last named descendants of the giants die into Samuel 21. After that, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, the Anakim, the giant clans, they disappear from Scripture, but their long survival, hundreds of years after a flood that was supposed to wipe them out, is one of the strangest facts in the Old Testament, and it is hiding in plain sight. In a single verse, in a single chapter, in the book of Numbers, Scripture has a way of saying enormous things in very few words. 3 words in Genesis 6, and also afterward. 3 more in Numbers 1:3. We saw the Nephilim. Together, they tell a story that runs underneath the entire conquest of Canaan. A story the Bible never fully explains, but never quite hides either. Beneath the surface of Scripture, the giants are still walking. Thank you for watching. Please give this video a like and share it with someone. What do you think about the Nephilim? Does there still exists today in our world? Comment below. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.